Hello, Steeler Nation, and welcome to another episode of your Pittsburgh Steelers Syndicate, the greatest, the best, the fastest growing new channel out there on the internet on your Pittsburgh Steelers, run by Steelers fans for Steelers fans. Guys, we're so close to getting to that magic 1K mark now. I think it was 855 at time of recording. So, guys, come on, please. If you're watching this and you haven't yet hit the subscribe button, hit that subscribe button. Help the Pittsburgh Steelers Syndicate get to that 1K mark. So, me and Mark, as Steelers fans, can keep spreading the black and gold word. We are real, true Steelers fans, unlike some other channels that purport to be Pittsburgh Steelers experts. So today I want to be talking about Tyree Johnson. Who? Yes, Tyree Johnson. Tyree Johnson is one of the UDFAs that Pittsburgh Steelers signed after the draft. He is currently on the 90-man roster. So obviously there's no guarantees that he makes the 53 or even the practice squad. However, I've done some research and some reading rounds, some watching of some tapes, and looking into who Tyree Johnson is, what Tyree Johnson is, and see some good potential in this guy. Now, given the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers outside linebacker and edge rusher positions are, well, after you get past TJ and Alex Highsmith, you're talking about Derek Tushka and Jannard Avery. Avery, who isn't getting a younger 1-year deal. This guy, Tyree Johnson, is a young kid out of Texas A&M who has got good potential. So, what do we know about this young man here, Tyree Johnson? So, what do we know? He is 6'4". He is 240 pounds. Now, that's very similar in size, or 248 pounds, it says there, or 240 I've read somewhere else. You can see the difference between NFL.com and Draft Network on one other hand. So somewhere between 240 and 248. He is similar in height and weight to both Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt. So a similar sort of size stature to both of those two guys. What else do we know? He's out of college. He's Texas A&M. His hometown is Washington, D.C., and he was a redshirt senior last year. He has arms of 60 and 7/8 inches and hands of 9 3/4 inches, because we know hand size is very important. 42nd time he ran at the combine was 4.77 seconds. And if you look at those ratings, he's rated 63 out of 100. He has very high tackling stats, 76%, sorry, bad eyesight. Again, very similar, 76% pass rush, run defense, 63%, and coverage at 62%. He played in all 47 college games, and he had, there, as you can see, over 1,000 snaps in the college game. Now, an interesting quote I read the other day whilst researching Tyree Johnson was, Johnson was one of the most underrated defensive players in a stacked SEC last season. So he played for Texas A&M in the most strongest college football conference, the SEC. The SEC contains teams like the Georgia Bulldogs, the Alabama Crimson Tide. These guys are the elite, the best of the best, the Auburn Tigers, some real tough teams in this SEC. And Texas A&M are one of those good teams, and they produce good players. So Tyree Johnson goes onto Steelers roster and follows in the footsteps of Dan Moore, who was drafted last year, left tackle. Buddy Johnson, who we've got high hopes for this season, that he could come through and be that buck linebacker that we're missing since Vinny Williams retired. Also DeMarvin Leal as well, who was drafted in the 3rd round. What else about Tyree Johnson? Well, he was an AP all-second SEC, all-second team player. Last year, he played 12 games and had 9 starts for the Aggies. That's the nickname of the Texas A&M team, if you do not know. He has, a solid frame, and he is a solid prospect. He was a threat with Michael Clemens on the edge, got after quarterbacks, and certainly caused quarterbacks in the SEC nightmares. If you look at the sack stats for the SEC last year, here they are here. So Will Anderson was number 1, 18 sacks out of Alabama. Will Anderson, who has not declared for the draft this year, but most likely will be in the draft next year. Sam Williams, who I think went to the Dallas Cowboys with 13 sacks. Phidarian Mathis, who I think went to the Washington Commanders with 9 sacks. And Derek Hall, who again has not declared, out of Auburn with 9 sacks, joint there. So you can see Tyree Johnson was in 5th place, joint with Phidarian Mathis and Derek Hall. The reason he was down to 5th is some places have him as 8.5 sacks, I think, possibly why he's down in 5th place. But certainly up there with the best of the best in the SEC. Now, bearing in mind, when they play in the SEC, they are playing the strongest teams. They're playing against the strongest defensive linemen and against the strongest offenses in college football, in Alabama, in Georgia, for example, who are very, very tough to play against. So whatever you do there, whatever you achieve in the SEC, is that a little bit higher than other conferences around the states. Well, that's my opinion anyway. Let's have a look at his overall stats. Here is the overall stats for Tyree Johnson. So he is a 4-year player out of Texas A&M. Now, as you can say, he played mostly on the defensive line because to A&M seemed to use a 4-3 setup, so you played end. But it's felt the Steelers could very much use him as an edge rusher or an outside linebacker this coming season or in seasons to come, depending on where he falls on the roster or on the practice squad. So if we go back to 2018, where he had 9 games, he had 2 solo tackles, 12 assisted, 14 total, 2 tackles for a loss, 1.5 sacks. And 1 forced fumble as well. In 2019, he played in 10 games. He had 18 solo tackles, 14 assisted tackles, 32 total, 6.5 tackles for a loss, 4 sacks, and 1 pass defense. In 2020, he had played 10 games. He had 12 solo tackles, 11 assisted tackles, 23 tackles in total. So his tackle fell off a little bit. 6 tackles for a loss and 4 sacks. And also 1 pass defense and 1 forced fumble. Now, last year, he played in 11 games or 12 games, depending on where you go for the stats now. You show the difference between what Draft Network say, what the NFL say, what Pro Football Reference say. There's obviously a difference there. 20 solo tackles, 11 assisted tackles, that's 31 in total, 9 tackles for a loss, 8.5 sacks, and 1 fumble recovery and 1 forced fumble. Career-wise, he obviously has got 52 solos, 48 assisted, 100 tackles in total, 23.5 tackles for a loss. 23.5% of his tackles are for a loss. That's pretty decent. 18 career sacks, 2 passes defensed, 1 fumble recovery, and 3 forced fumbles in his time with Texas A&M. Now, I was listening to someone from the NFL network talk about Tyree Johnson the other day, and they talked about him being a fantastic pass rusher. And then when asked why he was perhaps not taken in one of those later rounds, given the fact that obviously he was a very good pass rusher in a very strong pass rushing class, obviously with the likes of Thibodeau and Hutchinson and Trayvon Walker, it was stated that, well, the reason why was because his run defense needs a lot of work. Now, that's obviously may hold him back from moving on to the 53-man roster this year, but certainly something that the Steelers could work on and develop with him on the practice squad, or even with him on the 53-man roster, coming further down the depth chart. No doubt in my mind that working with Brian Flores, Jerry O will definitely develop this man's game, especially working with Brian Flores, who is a defensive genius. So what else do we know about the skill set of this guy, Tyree Johnson? Well, Tyree Johnson possesses power as a rusher, but still needs to develop his pro-like skill set. So it's all about the development side of the games. That's perhaps why he wasn't drafted. He wins with all-out hustle. He's quick, has a quick burst off the line. He even times the snap well. He's got good snap reading. He's got good upper body strength to lock out and move his opponent around. He's aggressive. He's tenacious. He's tough. Something I like in a Steeler. That's a Steeler, isn't it? Someone who's aggressive, someone who's tenacious, someone who's tough. That's a Pittsburgh Steeler for me. He plays with leverage at the point of attack. He recognizes cut blocks. He can rip past blockers with his strength. He can pull down ball carriers even when he isn't disengaged from a lineman, so using his one arm. A very, very strong young man. Some things to work on. Obviously, I've mentioned about his his run defense, and also his need to develop this pro-like skill set. Also, he needs to work on his direction change. He doesn't change direction very easily, and sometimes he can lose himself in a play and not realize where he ends up or where he goes. He can get himself away from the ball carrier. He doesn't have elite quickness, but he has good quickness. Something there definitely to develop as a good depth piece. Now, I'm not stating this guy is going to be in the same conversation as TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, but he is a possible depth piece. Now, given, like I said, that the Pittsburgh Steelers have 1 or 2 concerns at the outside linebacker position and that depth, this man, Tyree Johnson, who is very well rated coming out of Texas A&M, could well be a possible quality player. Now, especially as you consider, like I've said in the past, there are a lot of undrafted free agents who've gone on to have great success in the NFL. No more, obviously, than Donnie Shell and James Harrison of the Pittsburgh Steelers, both undrafted free agents. James Harrison was cut 7 times, and look at how successful he was. Now, I'm not for 1 minute saying that Tyree Johnson is the next coming of James Harrison. I'm not saying that in the slightest. What I'm saying, though, is this guy has promise and potential, and should he be worked with correctly by the Pittsburgh Steelers, which I have no doubt, given their past record at working with linebackers, with the talent of our defensive staff, Terrell Austin, of Brian Flores, of Jerry O, of Mike Tomlin, all those coaches have the potential to turn this young man into a very good NFL prospect. Well, that's what I think, guys. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below what you think of Tyree Johnson as a prospect for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And guys, if you haven't hit that subscribe button, get hitting that subscribe button. Help us get to that magical 1K. Thanks so much for listening. I'll finish this, as I always do, with here we go, Steelers. Come on.